first of all, how do songs usually get written in the band?
Well...
Usually someone pulls out a pen and a paper and they get written. Usually I'll come up with a bit of a tune or something, won't I? And then we'll see if Chrissy's got some words that'll go with it.
Usually I've got something a little hanging around and I think, oh, that'll go with that. So usually that's what happens. And then we develop it from there.
And does everyone in the band take part in the arrangements, in the developing of once you've done the music and you've done the words?
Yes, Mark is particularly good, this gentleman here, is particularly good on arrangements and is the musical leader in the group.
I make a lot of appointments for people, generally.
Hang on, what do you mean by that, the musical leader? Really plays Mr.
Mark,
Music.
when I say that, Mark is usually... Mark usually works out everything, and because he writes a lot of the music, we tend to turn to him for guidance, I should say.
And is that okay with everyone in the band? I mean, do you or any of the two boys ever feel like being the musical leader yourselves?
No, not really. I mean, everybody has input, but Mark's just the best musician in regards to... And I suppose because he writes the songs, writes a lot of the music, not all the music. Some of the others write music too, but because he kind of writes a lot of his songs, he tends to have most say on things, I suppose. And because we all respect his word, we like what he does. And he just has that knack of being able to really pull good things out of the hat.
Okay.
Enough.
Are you happy with that role?
No.
With that role? I don't know.
Does it sit easily with your personality to be the musical leader?
Oh, that's a pretty deep question, isn't it? I mean, I don't normally talk about stuff like that.
Yeah, I know, but you've got to face up to the fact, Marky, that he...
It's good to be
sometimes
your
he does.
own boss, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I think Mark is a natural... He's just a natural, very easy person to work with in that way.
Just a nice guy, I suppose.
Well, what about your image? When you think of the image that you portray on stage, does that affect the way the audience treats you?
What? The audience treats me when?
When you're on stage, when you're up there in front of the band,
Yes.
being the lead singer
Yes.
and being quite a focus of attention,
Yes.
what effect do you think that has on the audience?
Well, they have something to look at, I suppose, and they're entertained, and they have something to relate to and focus on. If I wasn't there, I wonder what they would do.
Focus on nobody.
Maybe,
How did you all reach that image of the Divinyls? How was that
It's not a contrived...
worked out?
When you say image, I kind of think, what is the image of the Divinyls? I don't really know what the image of the Divinyls is. I don't sit there and analyse it, and it's just the way we are. So I kind of wonder what you're talking about. Isn't it funny?
I would say that a lot of attention is focused on you as sort of a central figure. Do you ever feel like you're being objectified? Does it ever worry you?
No, not really. Not in particular. I think that's my job. I'm the front person of the band and I'm doing my job. When I first started with this group, I used to be very shy, believe it or not, and I used to stand there and until I worked out what I had to do and what was inside me and what I had to give. I used to be very inhibited, and I used to cop it when I'd get off in the wing, the wings when we'd go off stage, and the boys would say, "Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that?"
Was it?
Well,
in the wings or at the side of the pub?
Well, side of the pub. And I used to cop it, and they'd say, "Why don't you do this? And why don't you move more?" So I wasn't doing my job properly. So I kind of feel like I'm doing my job properly,
In general, how do you both feel about using sexuality on stage? Now I'm talking about whether it's a male or a female being the lead singer. How do you feel about that?
Using sexuality on
I mean, if you think of some of the heavy metal bands, I mean, I guess the classic person is Mick Jagger, but that style of using your body and using your sexuality up front.
I think it's really
I
wonderful.
think it looks good sometimes.
I love it. I mean, I really love that thing of seeing a sexy person up there with sexuality and something that's very earthy, and I really like that, personally. I love to see that in a performer, and a bit of sass, and I love it. Don't you? I mean, you would love it.
You know, I like it.
I don't like
yeah.
people to be too serious and to take themselves too seriously. I think you're up there performing and giving out to the audience, and I think that that's part of being a human being, is your sexuality and your sensuality, and you should give it out. And that's rock and roll too. It's part of rock and roll. It's part of performing, and you shouldn't be afraid of it. You should explore it, and because that's part of your essence.
Do you feel like you've had the freedom to do that without it being taken advantage of?
Yes, I do, very much so. To explore and to develop what I do without being exploited in a way that I don't feel that that's ever happened to me. I feel that I've been able to do and grow and be myself. And I think that's very important.
Do you think that you may be luckier than a lot of other women in bands in that regard, in that you don't feel like you're exploited?
It's what you choose to be, what you want to happen with yourself. I can't say that I feel luckier than other women in bands. I can't really, I can't speak for other people. I can't compare myself with other people, because I just do what I do, and my kind of pathway is, my pathway, and I can't say, what's happened to other people, Maybe I have been lucky in working with people that understand me and that are sensitive towards what I am, and I have demanded that. I've constantly demanded that. So I suppose I've earned it. And that right, I've had to earn that right.
What about you, Mark? Do you think that it's a thing of the past, that it's harder for women to make it in rock and roll? Or from what you know, does it still go on? Do women have to work harder to earn that sort of respect?
No, I think things are changing now, because I think that there's a lot more girls singing or playing or whatever, in
It's like
in
a whole
rock
new
and roll
thing has
now.
opened up
I mean,
now.
I
Look
saw
how
a
many girls
great
are around.
girl lead guitar player the other day on
incredible.
TV.
What
She
was
was
her name?
fantastic. I just can't remember.
She was on something the
But
other
she
night.
was good, and that's the first time I've ever really seen a great. You know the one?
Guitar
I don't know. It was
player.
the first time I'd seen her, but she was great.
I mean, she was really rock and very raunch. She had a leotard on or something,
She
but
could
she
play
was.
470 notes a minute. Which was
I mean, she was incredible. And like there's this whole cross section that's happening now,
So it's changing.
and it's
Isn't it?
very
Getting
frustrating when you're pigeonholed and people say with girls, you're like this, because it's not like that. We're becoming now. There's just as many girl performers as men performers, but they still want to pigeonhole us, and that's very frustrating. When I think there's a lot more of individuality happening within women at the moment, girls, what they're doing compared to what a lot of men do. Men copy, but I think girls are really trying to find their own individuality. But they're still grouped together and said, oh, this person's like that person, and there's pigeonholing, which is so frustrating, because I think there's a lot of individuality going on. You're like this, because it's not like that. We're becoming now, there's just as many girl performers as men performers, but they still want to pigeonhole us, and that's very frustrating. When I think there's a lot more of individuality happening within women at the moment, girls, what they're doing compared to what a lot of men do. Men copy, but I think girls are really trying to find their own individuality. But they're still grouped together and said, oh, this person's like that person, and there's pigeonholing, which is so frustrating, because I think there's a lot of individuality going on.
What do you both think about one-night stands?
I mean, when I play in a place for only one night, I think that it's a good thing.
What about sexual one-night stands?
Strangers when we meet,
I don't
strangers
know.
when we part.
It's probably becoming more dangerous now.
I think so too. I think with all this AIDS business, I think you must be pretty careful. I don't know.
You've got to try and conserve
We
your
talk
bodily
about
fluids
that
as
a lot
well.
lately, don't we? About one-night stands and all that kind of stuff. I think people in bands must be very careful, extremely careful, because that kind of has always been part of the lifestyle. And I think now all this business is going on that you can't have one-night stands anymore. You've got to be really careful.
Are you talking particularly about AIDS?
Yeah, I'm talking about AIDS.
What about in general? Has your attitude towards
I don't know,
one-night
unless
stands...
they find a cure for it. In which case, you know, well, there you go.
What about one-night stands? What our attitude was?
Yeah, like what about when you were younger? What was your attitude towards one-night stands then?
Oh boy, I used to have one-night stands all the time because I used to think that was how I was going to find love. So I used to think by going to bed with somebody, I would wake up and they would love me, or I would love them, and I would find it.
Did you ever find love?
No, not that way. But that I used to do that a lot, and I used to think, you know. But since then, I have learned that that's not the way to find love, and that's not what a relationship's all about.